With Overwatch 2 came a new game mode called Push. And with like any kind of new content, it's initially seen with praise because it's something new, something different, especially since they removed all the assault maps from Overwatch 2. And these push maps were supposed to replace those maps because it fit better with the 5v5 format. Being a lot more brawlier and more flexible compared to Overwatch 1, this Push Game Mode was supposed to show all the great things about the new Overwatch 2 gameplay style. And while I do think that they did accomplish those goals, it isn't the most well-executed game mode, and because of that, many people consider it the worst game mode in Overwatch 2. So let's talk about that a little, what is the Push Game Mode, what are its problems, its flaws, and how do you make it better? So Push, in the most basic terms, can be explained as this. There are 2 flags that need to be taken to the opponent's home base. And there are 2 win conditions, either A, you actually make it all the way to the enemy's home base, or B, you have the most amount of distance covered compared to the enemy by the time the timer runs out. And only 1 flag can be pushed at a time with the help of a push robot, and whoever controls this push robot gets progress added to their barrier. What makes this game mode so unique is the fact that it's a lot different compared to Escort, Hybrid, and Assault, where instead of having one team defending and one team pushing at all times, instead the fight changes depending on who has the advantage. And of course, that makes the gameplay really interesting, because at one moment you're attacking, at the other moment you're defending, and sometimes you might be at a stalemate. And in the moment, Push is really fun, in my opinion, because it requires you to be on your toes at all times, kind of managing multiple things. You're not just defending, and at the same time, you're not just attacking, so your strategy kind of has to be a hybrid of those two. You really have to decide whether or not you need to commit to a fight, or you need to back off a little, or if you should, collapse on the enemy. It's very much closer to traditional sports like soccer or football, where having control of the ball, in which could also be compared to the objective, is what controls the momentum of the game. However, there are many little pieces that make the game not so fun, and really shows that the game mode could honestly be executed a lot better. So let's go over some of the complaints that are most common with the Overwatch community. Now first off, we have to talk about the absolute role. In Overwatch, there are a couple of team compositions that require you to choose specific heroes in order to counter them. And sometimes it can take a long time to adapt, either maybe you chose one wrong support, a wrong tank, who knows, a lot of things happen, or maybe your team just has a bad moment. They just get unlucky and they lose the first fight, and because of that the enemy is able to roll them all the way back to their home base. But now let's say you get your footing. Let's say you finally make a good defensive line and now you're able to attack. Well, in Overwatch, the robot that is pushing the barriers is very quick when he's not pushing any kind of barrier. He runs really fast to whatever he needs to go to. And that's all fine and dandy until you reach your own barrier. And because your team suffered such a great loss by the amount that was captured, more than likely you're already halfway through the match, and now you have to keep that constant momentum to even reach the same caliber as the enemy team. And more often than not, if the enemy has such a huge advantage, then more than likely you're probably gonna lose, and that's one of the things about Push that really makes it unfun. Because that point of where you just admit, yeah, we're gonna lose, can be done so early in the match that countering is just almost seen as a fever dream. Obviously, it's not impossible, but your odds are so against you. The enemy team doesn't have to worry about the timer once they get to your home base with the barrier. But more than likely, by the time your team reaches even near 2/3 of their capture, the timer is already down to 0, and now you can't do any real strategy that requires your entire team to stop capturing, because in overtime, if your entire team leaves the objective robot alone, then it's game over. So now you're at a huge disadvantage there. You can't afford to leave the robot, but because of that, you have to sacrifice your own strategic potential. And more than likely, the enemy is going to be able to take advantage of that, and you will lose. Now this kind of plays into the next issue with Push, where a lot of the times when the timer runs out and the push barriers are, neck and neck, it really doesn't feel like it is deserving of the enemy team if all they do is push it like maybe just a little centimeter. Maybe you had the advantage the entire time, but because the enemy team at the last second was able to push just a little bit more than your team, you are ultimately given a loss. And I'm not saying that it's unfair, because I'm sure that, yeah, maybe that last push was necessary, and to be fair, if you were really that neck and neck, then that obviously meant that you guys were around even same skill. But it really makes it unrewarding when a couple of meters really is the deciding factor of who wins. It's not like you captured the entire point. It just makes it really hard to justify that, yeah, the enemy team won because of fair reasons, they were just better than us. By having that small discrepancy on who wins based on the timer and based on the distance and it being so minuscule, it just feels terrible afterwards because you could have won that, but you felt robbed. Maybe some bullshit thing about Overwatch got in the way. Maybe the enemy switched to a team composition that you just couldn't realistically counter in the time that was given. Because even then, you still have to go all the way back to your spawn in order to change characters. And with how teamfights usually end in a team wipe, those 10 seconds of respawn and then the other 10 seconds to get to the front line can take so much valuable time that it does make it feel a little bullshit. But let's say you want a solution. Let's say, well, how can you fix this? Are there any other games that have something similar? And yeah, there is. It's actually kind of obvious. And I would even say that the push mode was kind of inspired by this. You see, in Team Fortress 2, there's a game mode type known as 5CP. And it works very similar to the push game mode, where two teams fight to capture a majority of the map. Obviously, the map is symmetrical, and the only way to win is to capture the enemy home base. But instead of a robot pushing barriers, instead you have control points that you have to capture. You still have everything there that is recognizable from the push mode. You start all the way back at spawn, you have to meet in the middle to capture an objective to start the push. And depending on who has what captured, you get a forward spawn. Once you get to the home base, you capture it and you win. However, not everybody sees 5CP as a terrible map type. In fact, the traditional Sixes competitive community of Team Fortress 2, which is, the biggest community of competitive players, actually prefers playing on 5CP compared to other game mode types, because it just works so well for them. And in my opinion, people don't really think of 5CP as being unfair. And with that in mind, we can take push in either two directions in order to make it feel a little bit more fair than before. So the first route is to make push into a multi-round mode. So instead of only having one round of push, you would have multiple, just like the control game mode. Of course, you would have a much shorter timer and a significantly faster push robot. Once a team captures fully, they earn 1 point. That way there's a lot more opportunities to change the tide of battle, and of course be able to adapt accordingly. But of course, because of that, games might last for a long time, and that might require a server match timer, one on top of the round timer, in order to limit how long a match can last. If nobody captures anything by the end of the round timer, then it's a stalemate. If nobody captures anything by the end of the server timer, then it goes into a golden cap where whoever wins the round wins it all. Of course, this is taking a lot more inspiration from Team Fortress execution of 5CP. Instead, what you could do that specializes more into what Overwatch already has is to do something where the timer only goes down when the robot is either in a stalemate or not being captured. That way, each team is given a chance to capture the robot without the timer going down from changing hands. Though I'd probably still get rid of the comparison win condition. Instead, the only win condition being that of capturing the enemy home base. I don't know, for me there's just something so bullshit about being able to win just based on a little bit of a meter, rather than actually doing the entire job. But that's just me. Anyways, what do you think about this discussion? What's your opinion on the push game mode? Do you think of any other kind of changes that you would apply in order to make the game mode better? Or do you think maybe they should just remove the game mode entirely? Obviously, that's not realistic, but of course it's your opinion. Make sure to leave your opinion down in the comment section below. If you found this video interesting, like it if you like it, dislike it if you disliked it. If you'd like to see more content just like this in the future, make sure to subscribe. And if you'd like to support this channel, I do have a Patreon in the description. Thank you so much to my fellow patrons, and I will talk to you guys later.